How often do I water my indoor plants? This is probably one of the #1 questions I get asked about indoor plants. How often do I water my snake plant? How often do I water my pothos? How often do I water my aloe vera? Well, there's no simple answer. So let's break it all down for you. The variables when it comes to watering your indoor plants, the reason why there is no simple answer. #1, it's the type of plant. #2 is how much light is the location getting. #3 is the size of the container. Then there's the location in your home. Then there's also how much daylight has it received that week, or even based on the time of year. And then finally, the age of that plant. How long has it been in the pot? Because it could just be all roots, and there's a reason why it may need a little bit more water. Okay, let's dive into it a little deeper. So the type of plant plays into how much water a plant will require, or how often you water that plant. So take, for instance, the snake plant, also known as the mother-in-law's tongue. It's a drought-tolerant plant that likes to be more on the dry side. So that won't need as much water as a pothos. The pothos with a larger leaf, typically a plant with a larger leaf, will need a more frequency of watering. As well, if you have things like cacti or even aloe vera, those guys there want to be more arid and more dry, and including that is a jade plant. So the type of the plant really plays into how much water it needs, how frequent it will need watering, and what level of moisture that plant really wants. Now the size of the pot. So plants that are in smaller pots will dry out faster. There's just not that much soil that's there. So if you have a larger container, it's not going to need as frequent of a watering. Whereas smaller containers, if they're in bright light, will need more frequent watering because they'll dry out just faster. So question people ask too, does the type of pot matter? Well, if it is a porous pot, like a clay pot, it'll dry out a little faster because it actually has that exchange of air that will go between the air and the soil itself. Whereas even some of the glazed pots can stay a little bit moist longer, and plastic pots tend to stay a little bit moist longer. So how much light has a plant received? Well, light is the reason why we get thirsty. Like on a sunny day where we're dry, we get thirsty. It's the same with plants. So they could be in a south-facing window, but maybe that month was a dark month and we had 30 days of rain. Well, it won't need as much water as if it was a summer month where we had lots of sunshine that entire week. That plant could need water more frequently. So based upon how much light that plant's receiving is how quick it's gonna dry out. So how does the time of year play with the watering of plants? Well, let's think about it. So winter, the dark days of winter. Sometimes we only have under 8 hours of daylight. In the summer, you can have over 15 hours of daylight. So longer amounts of daylight equal plants drying out faster, more watering. So from really all the way from March through to October, more frequent watering. From October through to March, those dark days of winter, less daylight, less watering indoor plants. So how long has that plant been in a pot? If it's been in that pot and it's root bound and maybe ready for repotting, it's all roots. And because it's all roots, there's no soil. Because there's very little soil, it won't really have anything to absorb moisture. So if a plant needs to be repotted and it's all roots, it will need more frequent watering. If it has just been put into a new pot and it has lots of space, more soil, you need less watering because it's gonna stay wetter longer, and we want to avoid root rot. So how to know if your plant needs water? Well, we could run up to a plant that looks droopy and you're thinking to yourself, it needs water. But let's remember grade 10 and grade 11 science, this thing called osmosis. And that was sometimes when something has too much water, is too saturated, it can droop too. So before you go to water a plant, because often people think, oh, it just needs water, it just needs water, you need to check the soil. The best tool to check the soil is your finger. And what you're gonna do is you're gonna take your finger and you're gonna stick it into the soil about 1 inch. If that soil feels dry to touch, then you're going to water. If it feels moist, then you're not gonna water. That's as simple as it is. There are many different devices that are out there. You can get moisture meters. You can actually even get sensors now that will Bluetooth to your phone and tell you when a plant needs water. But really, your eyes, your visual, looking at the plant and seeing if it looks like it needs watering, where it's drooping, knowing how much light that you received that week, and then going over and checking the plant. I recommend that you should check your plants weekly. On a Saturday morning, you're having your tea, you're going through your house and you're talking to your plants, you're checking your plants to see if they need water. They'll be happy, you'll be happy. And just a reminder, if it's droopy, it could be too wet too. So how to water plants correctly? The goal is to put water on the soil. So the goal is for us not to water foliage. The goal is for us to water the soil. The reason for that, both indoors and outdoor plants, is we're trying to reduce the risk of disease. And many plants won't want water on the foliage itself, especially flowering plants. With flowering plants, sometimes if you're watering the flower, that flower won't last as long. So you can actually do a couple things. You can either water with a watering can. You can actually water them in your sink, where you're gonna be filling your sink up with water and basically setting the pots in. And as soon as you don't see any more bubbles, or you set them in for a period of time, they'll be watered. It's a simple way to water. And those are just some of the different techniques that you can use. So the big key is try to keep the water off the foliage. Now, people are gonna say, but what about misting plants? The reason why we're misting plants is for humidity. So during the winter time, when our heaters and our furnaces are coming on more frequently, we are misting plants to build some moisture, because there's hardly any moisture in our home because it's so dry. When we mist, it dries so quickly, gives a little bit of humidity around the plant, but at the same time dries quickly that it's not gonna cause any harm. If we did that in the summer when we have more humid homes, it could stay on the plants and create some disease. So a good key when you need to mist a plant, if you go around and all of a sudden you're shocking your spouse, your kids, or others, and I mean shocking like electricity shocking with your finger, that's a good time when you should mist your plants. So you'll hear this double watering. What does it mean to double water a plant? So when we have plants that are in potting soil, when that soil dries out, it's like a sponge. And we know with a sponge, in order for that sponge to accept water, we gotta moisten the sponge and then we can use it. So if we go to water a plant and we see that water flow right out of the pot, happens a lot with the outdoor hanging baskets. Well, you water them, you wait a few moments, and then you're gonna come back about 5 minutes later and water again. That first watering opens the soil up like the sponge. That second watering is the one that's absorbed. So that's what it means by a double watering. For some plants, if you see the water flow out, double water them. What is the right temperature to water your plants? Okay, plants, indoor plants. Most of them are tropical plants. That's why they call them tropical plants. There's no freezing rain in the tropics. So there is no cold water in the tropics. Room temperature water is the ideal water temperature for plants overall, both indoors and out. But specifically for those indoor plants, room temperature water. Good thing that you can do is after you finish watering your plants, fill up your watering can and leave it in your home. Just let it sit there. That'll actually acclimatize the water to room temperature water. It'll also even put a little bit of humidity inside that room as it's kind of gonna evaporate a bit. And as it evaporates, it'll actually evaporate some of the impurities. So by having that water stand, it's better water for your plants and it's the perfect temperature. What is the best time of day to water indoor plants? The same as outdoor plants. It's always ideal to water them in the morning. The reason for that is they're going to dry out during that course of day and not sit wet at night as much. Also, the plants can accept the water, and at the beginning of a day, they're going towards more daylight. So as they wake up, it's like us waking up in the morning. What's the first thing we always generally grab? Is a drink of water. Just like us, the plants would ideally like their drink of water in the morning to set them off for the right day. Going away on vacation, who's gonna water your plants? Okay, there are watering globes that are out there where you fill them up with water and you stick them in the soil and they'll slowly allow that water to flow in. But if you're going away for an extended period of time, more than 2 weeks, first thing you can do is to group your plants together. They won't dry out as fast when they're grouped together. And you need to find a friend. You need to find a friend that's gonna come by and on occasion, especially if you're going away for a month or a couple of months, to water your plants. Now, I don't want this to break up any friendships, okay? Because they're gonna come and water your plants. Sometimes they try a little bit too hard. We've all killed a plant. If your friend kills one of your plants, still let them be your friend. Hey, water is life, and sometimes we use water in the kitchen when we're boiling pasta, maybe we're steaming some vegetables, or we're even boiling potatoes. All that water, allow it to cool after we've used it, we've eaten the food, And then that same water, we can water our plants with it. Pasta water, potato water, the starches, really good for the plants. The plants actually love it. And even when you're doing the broccolis, the steamed broccoli, maybe steamed beans or spinach, that same water that looks oh so green, there's micronutrients within that water that when you water the plants love it, and we're not wasting water. Have you ever sat in a bathtub for 24 hours? Okay, this is the last thing I want you to remember about watering plants. Plants, the #1 killer is overwatering indoors. That is killing with kindness, too much water. So like plants, we don't want to sit in a bathtub for 24 hours. They don't want to sit wet for too long. So when it comes to watering, you're better off to have drier plants than having extended periods of plants that are wet for too long. So the key is always allow them to dry out in between watering, and you're gonna have healthy, happy plants. Watering plants. My goal is I hope I saved a few plants in your home. I hope that they're healthier. And if you like this content, make sure that you go and click and give us a thumbs up, because what that does is allow YouTube to know that we're doing good things and we're helping you, and that'll help us. As well, you can subscribe, and if you subscribe, I'll love you, and your plants will even love you more. Hey, have a blooming good day and keep growing good things.